Good afternoon. I'm here to speak to the people of Manitoba about a very unique threat to our economy, and that is the threat posed by the Trump tariffs, the Trump tariff tax. So by now, most Manitobans are starting to appreciate how serious of a situation that this is, and I'm here to provide reassurance that your provincial government, along with the feds and all of our partners, are going to be working around the clock to protect your jobs and to safeguard our economy. At this time, unity is extremely important. When we face a threat like this, we all have to stand together as Canadians and stand together as Manitobans. Folks who've been paying close attention to the provincial scene will know that since the election, we've been talking about one Manitoba. And the reason why we've been doing that is because we know that we are all one people who live in this province and we share a common destiny. But now that we are presented with this threat from beyond our borders in the form of a Trump tariff tax, the idea of one Manitoba takes on renewed importance. As we head into this period of tariffs, some of our fellow Manitobans are going to feel the impacts right away. For other Manitobans and in other industries, it may take some time, but we all need to stand together, shoulder to shoulder, to be there for one another. And I also want to acknowledge that this is going to mean a change for many people in the province, things that we've taken for granted, things that are actually a part of our culture, I would say, like cross-border shopping, are going to be changed by this new reality that we are facing and that has been brought in by President Trump. And so this week, your provincial government, we are going to be announcing every day new steps that we're taking to support our economy and to protect your jobs. And today I'm announcing the first of those steps. Today I'm telling the people of Manitoba that beginning on Tuesday, February 4th, the day that tariffs take effect, we are going to be pulling U.S. products off of Liquor Mart shelves. This applies to Liquor Marts, Liquor Mart Express, and of course to the wholesale operation that MBLL runs in this province. And what does this mean? This means that we are going to be taking $80 million out of the U.S. economy. This is $80 million that we won't be spending in the United States of America. We have to stand up for jobs in our province. We have to stand up for manufacturers and the ag industry and the energy industry and everyone else who's going to be threatened by these tariffs. And it's very, very important that we stand up for ourselves, not just as Manitobans, but also as Canadians. The situation that we're confronted with, yes, this is a trade dispute. This is an economic threat. But we should also be very, very clear-eyed about the threat that this poses to our sovereignty as an independent country. We have stepped up when it comes to border security. We already had a secure border, and we've deployed more resources to it. Since our election, we have brought the hammer down on drug traffickers in our province. And so when it comes to taking action on fentanyl or on the border, we're happy to do that because it aligns with our values as Manitobans. But if we bow down at this current moment, then what is the next edict that we will be told to respond to as Manitobans and Canadians? And so what I've been saying in the lead up to this moment is we are trying to work closely with our American allies and to make the case about the strength of that relationship. But now that this fight is here, a fight that we did not ask for, we have to stick up for ourselves. And so the first step that we're announcing, it has to do with pulling U.S. products off the shelves, and it means that we won't be carrying these products thereafter. We've been in conversation with some of the private retailers, and we're not going to be providing them any directive what to do, but of course we expect that Manitobans as consumers are going to be wanting to spend their dollars on Canadian products, Canadian liquor, Canadian wines, as well as maybe on products that come from parts of the world that are going to treat us fairly and that are going to be good business partners for us. Through the rest of the week, we are going to be announcing other measures to support business, to encourage you to shop local, to encourage you to think carefully about where you spend your money for vacation. And I recognize that people are not going to change your habits overnight. And if you got that tournament planned with your kids or maybe a getaway that you're about to leave for, I'm not asking anyone to cancel those plans. But as we go further into this scenario of living with the Trump tariff tax, then we need to seriously shift our habits and shift our habits towards Canadian products, Manitoba destinations, and resources that are going to keep money in our own pockets here. This is not about retaliation. This is about looking out for number one. And who's number one? You are. The people of Manitoba, the people of Canada. And so I want to reiterate that the province of Manitoba fully supports the federal government having a strong response to what we're seeing from the United States of America, and that we will be here to ensure that our economy keeps moving forward in a good way and that your jobs are protected. Vive le Canada, vive le Canada libre. Happy to take any questions people have.
Mr. Premier, $80 million a year in liquor products? And what will you be doing in the short term for hog producers, chicken producers, canola growers who do not have Canadian, who grow and produce more products than can be processed and sold in Canada?
Yeah, we're working closely with the ag sector. You know, our trade council that we've stood up, this U.S. Advisory Council, we've got many voices from the ag industry there, and we're going to be there to support. I think in the immediate instance, one of the things that we've made sure is that when our finished products from the ag industry face this tariff in the States starting on Tuesday, we're making sure that those American companies competing with them are not going to have a tariff-free entry into our province and into our country. And so again, this is going to shift how you shop. This is going to have an impact at the grocery store. I'm asking grocers out there, make it clear what the Canadian products are. Make it clear what's made in Manitoba. There is going to be a strong appetite for Manitobans and Canadians to spend money to support our own producers and our own manufacturers. And so for grocery chains to participate, I think that that's very, very important. At the same time, you're going to see a difference, right? Like the American products are going to become more expensive here in Canada. And so if you buy that Canadian pork, you buy that Canadian chicken, and the value is there on the dollars and cents side while you're boosting that sense of patriotism, then I think that that's probably something that makes sense to a lot of people.
What can you do to encourage Maple Leaf, High Life, smaller processors to ramp up production?
Well, we're working with them. And I think the steps that I've just outlined, the steps around making sure that American competitors can't undercut them at a time where our products are getting hit with this Trump tariff tax, it's a first step. This is going to be a long-term situation. This is going to be a multi-year situation that we're facing here. Whether it's tariffs, whether it's a renegotiation of CUSMA, what was formerly called the North American Free Trade Deal, we are going to be dealing with a situation like this for the coming years. And so this week, we're launching the first steps that we're taking to support our economy. These steps, including the further measures that will roll out in our coming spring budget, will be steps to give our economy time and space to respond. And over the long term, what we need to do is to reorient our provincial economy towards businesses that create good jobs here in Manitoba. We need to get stronger at making things. We need to get stronger at mining things. We need to get stronger at energy. We need to get stronger at making tech stuff as well. And so we have to respond to the Trump tariff tax with immediate measures to support our economy that also give us time and space to be able to pivot towards where the good jobs are going to be in the future. This is a fight over manufacturing jobs. This is a fight over energy. And we are not going to let those jobs be taken out of our province or out of our country. And so by now, I think Manitobans are starting to realize how serious a situation this is. And we are going to be making some tough decisions. Again, pulling U.S. products off of liquor store shelves is not something that I don't think any of us contemplated, and yet here we are. And this is one step that we're taking to pull $80 million out of the American economy, but also to ensure that that $80 million is going to be spent on Canadian products and is going to be spent on products from regions that are good business partners for us. And so we need to, I think, start to wrap our heads around the fact that this is going to be a long-term, multi-year pivot. This is going to be a long-term reorientation of our economy. And we need to make those investments in manufacturing and energy and the other areas. We can't let the U.S. take our jobs. We can't let President Trump take money out of our pocket. We have to stick up for ourselves as Manitobans and as Canadians.
Hydro is our number 4 export, number 3 export to the U.S. Is it your understanding that hydro electricity exports are subject to 25 or 10% tariffs?
Well, this may change because we're still looking at the stuff in real time and we're still getting the interpretations. The initial look at the executive orders, because obviously there's the big trade executive order that was issued yesterday, but it makes reference to earlier executive orders that the president released. Our initial understanding is that the hydroelectricity is going to be at 10%, as well as potentially other products that we export here from Manitoba. But I want to make clear that we should not accept 10% as a victory. 0% is what we should expect. And 10% at any other time in recent history would have been seen as a big attack on our country. And yeah, 25% is way worse, but we have to keep things into perspective. That we're talking about jobs, we're talking about livelihoods, we're talking about the economic horse that pulls the social cart here in Manitoba. So not only is this about the businesses who are on the front lines of the export sector, this is about making sure we have the resources to pay for healthcare and to pay for schools in our province. And that's why that question of national unity, of Canadianness, of Manitobaness is being invoked here, because this is a serious, serious situation that we need to see for what it is. And to be clear, we have no quarrel with the American people. These are still our friends and neighbors, just as they've always been. But their president is making a serious mistake. And we have to take action so that the American people pay attention and send a message to their president that he's making a mistake.
What would you say to small businesses who maybe don't have an association behind them, don't have a lawyer on payroll, who are just feeling really confused and just sort of blowing in the wind as to how this is going to affect them? What would you say to them in kind of the days and weeks ahead?
Yeah, we're gonna be there to work together. So for the local businesses that sell stuff here in the province, we're going to be there to encourage people to shop local and to buy Manitoba goods. For the smaller and medium-sized enterprises that are exporting goods to the States, we're going to be there to stand up for you and to try and help you keep your head above water. And in the immediate instance, we've stood up this tariff hotline. So for the small businesses out there, for the workers out there, the working people, call our tariff hotline. We'll get you the information as best we can. Obviously, there's a ton of uncertainty right now because the lists of what's going to be tariffed in terms of retaliation are still in the process of being released publicly. There's still uncertainty about which products fall into the 10% or 25% on the American side of this Trump tariff wall. But again, this tariff line's running all weekend. It's running 24/7, so you can dial 1-877-827-4330 or 204-945-8011 if you're willing to pay the long distance. I don't know if people still pay long distance anywhere, but you can hit up the website as well too, manitoba.ca/tariff response. So manitoba.ca/tariff response. You can submit something by text there, or you can call the hotline 1-877-827-4330. You'll speak to a real person on this hotline. They'll give you the answers that we're certain about. If you have a more in-depth question related to your industry or your business that we can't get to you right away, we'll make sure that within 24 hours you get an answer.
And I just wanted to ask, agriculture, small businesses, consumers themselves are going to be affected by this. Have you had the chance to talk to the PM about this maybe, and is there potential for federal help for Manitoba here?
The PM?
Yeah.
Yeah, the federal government and the provinces and territories have been talking about different ways to support workers and business. And we will be there to support your jobs, to protect your jobs, and to support our economy. But we need to recognize that this is going to be different from COVID, the last big economic shock that we lived through. During COVID, everybody had to close their doors immediately, right? the dentist office, the dry cleaner, the restaurant had to close their doors immediately. That's not going to happen this time. On Tuesday, the dentist office, the restaurant, the dry cleaner are going to open as usual, and they may not immediately see an impact. On the other hand, you're going to have manufacturers and you're going to have folks who are trying to export ag products to the States who are immediately going to hit difficult times. And so the response this time needs to be targeted in a different way. And over the course of the week, we're going to share more information. On Tuesday, the day that the tariffs take effect, you'll see us talking about the tax deferrals and other supports for business that are going to be very, very targeted. But again, we'll be there to protect jobs. And if you work for yourself, we're going to be there to protect your job.
En français, s'il vous plaît, pour Radio-Canada, est-ce que vous pouvez revenir sur l'annonce d'aujourd'hui, puis quelles mesures vous allez prendre pour répondre à ces tarifs?
Ben, mardi, nous prenons tous les produits d'alcool des magasins, des liquor marts dans la province. Nous allons arrêter de les vendre, c'est-à-dire à peu près 80 millions de dollars par année que nous sommes présentement en train d'ajouter à l'économie des États-Unis. Nous allons arrêter ça et puis commencer d'utiliser ces dollars ici dans notre pays pour diversifier et puis acheter d'autres produits d'alcool qui sont créés dans le Canada. Alors, c'est une étape que nous prendrons cette semaine parmi des autres pour répondre à ce grand défi. C'est un défi énorme pour l'économie, mais aussi pour notre pays. Et c'est très, très important d'avoir une réponse forte canadienne pour ce que nous pourrons appuyer l'économie, les emplois, mais aussi notre identité comme Canadiens.
Est-ce que vous envisagez de donner d'autres interdictions sur d'autres produits américains?
Bien, ça se peut parce que je crois que ça serait un défi au terme long. Alors, un autre endroit que nous sommes présentement engagés avec, c'est tous les produits que le gouvernement et les corporations des couronnes sont en train d'acheter. Alors, ce n'est pas une politique finie, mais nous regardons à ce qu'on pourrait faire sur ce niveau-là pour les produits que nous achetons en tant que gouvernement de l'États-Unis.
Quand vous dites produits, est-ce que c'est vraiment juste du matériel ou vous envisagez des services?
Ça pourrait être des services, oui. Mais comme j'ai dit, les détails, nous verrons parce que nous sommes toujours en train de travailler sur cette politique, mais j'ai demandé au ministre des Finances de regarder avec nos autres collègues du cabinet provincial.
Et dans les mesures pour aider les entreprises et les travailleurs, est-ce que vous envisagez encore de changer les taxes sur les entreprises? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres mesures que vous allez évaluer cette semaine avec votre conseil?
Oui, à mardi, la journée où ces nouveaux impôts de Trump vont commencer, nous annoncerons nos réponses sur les coupures ici dans Manitoba. Coupure des impôts.
Coupure des impôts.
Ouais.
Merci.
Companies that are multinationals, like NFI and Pfizer, that have big operations here but also operate in the U.S., have been looking at this since Trump first raised this after the election but before he was inaugurated. What are you going to do to ensure, what's your government going to do to ensure that these large employers in Manitoba do not shift their operations south of the border?
Yeah, I think the immediate challenge is going to be around liquidity. And so we have tools in the toolbox that we're going to be using to help. And the big challenge for us is to protect jobs in Manitoba and to keep jobs here in the province. It's very clear that in putting up this tariff wall that Trump is trying to construct, he's trying to keep Canadians out of future success in areas like tech and energy and manufacturing, where a lot of the good jobs are, and we're not going to let that happen. And part of that means protecting what we have right now, and then also ensuring that we're pivoting our economy long-term to sustain these industries and attract more activity in these sectors, like manufacturing, like energy, like the biosciences and the tech industry as well. So that's really, really important, and I can tell you that we're engaging with the business sector all the time. We've got a very public-facing way of doing that through this advisory council on the U.S. that we've struck up with CEOs and sector representatives and labor and other folks. I actually invited the Manitoba Métis Federation and the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs to join that table as well over the weekend. And then, there's a lot of private conversations that are happening to understand the scope of the impacts here and to just send that message of reassurance that we want you to succeed. And we're going to take the steps as a provincial government to make sure that jobs stay in Transcona, jobs stay in Thompson, jobs stay in the Pembina Valley. And these are, just a few examples of the things that we're going to do. But we have to be very clear-eyed that this is going to be a long-term effort that we all have to band together as Manitobans and Canadians to sustain.
Is there anything that a provincial government can do to affect the import and sale of American products where you don't control it like you do with alcohol, where you're sourcing it and selling it? And
that's a good point.
Yeah. How do you do that as a provincial government?
Well, I think some of the things we're looking at are like the encouragement to shop local, to buy Manitoban, buy Canadian, and putting that call out to grocery stores today, but I think to all retailers, to really anybody who's selling a good or service, that you put that made in Manitoba, made in Canada stamp on things right now, I think you're going to find a lot of interest from consumers. I think up to now, maybe the average Manitoban, average Canadian would have been forgiven for maybe just thinking that this was just Trump being Trump. But this is a real threat to our economy. And if you can make that decision to support local, to support Manitoba, to support Canada, then you should do so. And so I think we have the ability to encourage. And then, of course, I think later in the week, you're going to see us put some resources behind some of these initiatives as well, too.
That includes frozen potatoes. It's another big one that we produce. I'll send a lot of potatoes and other veggies to the U.S. We can't stockpile the amount that we send. Is there going to be specifics this week on that and on live hogs?
Well, we're going to be rolling stuff out each day. And, these are just some of the challenges that our economy is going to be facing as we pivot. The other thing that we need to recognize is that this is going to play out over time. And so how does a 25% tariff get applied at the same time that the Canadian dollar potentially loses value, which in normal times would mean we start to export more. But now because of that tariff tax that's being applied, all of a sudden the volumes may not increase. So what I mean to say by pointing out that example is that we're just going to have to work together in terms of monitoring the ag industry, the manufacturing sector, and everybody here in Manitoba to see what the impacts are and to respond with flexibility, intelligence, and with speed to make sure that we're protecting jobs and we're protecting our economy.
Monsieur Kinew, quand vous demandez aux Manitobains d'acheter local,
Ouais.
en dehors de demander, est-ce que vous comptez mettre en place des mesures pour encourager les achats locaux?
Oui.
Et quelles mesures vous
Ben, nous
imaginez?
verrons les détails cette semaine. Il y a... Oui,
Des possibilités.
oui.
Est-ce que vous pouvez en parler aujourd'hui?
Oui, cette semaine.
Cette semaine.
Oui.
Information you've heard about the tariff hotline so far? I know it's
Yeah.
very early hours and days, but is there anything coming out about, are people calling? What questions do they have?
Yeah, I think we've been hearing from a mix of businesses, like business owners and workers. And so when the worker's calling in, it's, hey, what's going to happen to this industry that I'm a part of? And I show up for work each day, a lot of uncertainty. And when it comes to the business owners who've been calling in, I think there's a lot of uncertainty about the timeline and the application of the tariffs and the counter tariffs. And so we're trying to get that information out as quickly as possible. And then, of course, along the way, if people are saying, hey, here's the real impact on a day-to-day level of what these tariffs are having, we need to hear that as well, too.
I just wanted to ask, with the tariffs coming in, the exports will slow down. Is the domestic market big enough to support those producers, or should they be looking at other markets now?
Over the long term, we need to diversify where we export to. That much is clear. This is the second time in 8 years that President Trump has torn up what used to be called the North American Free Trade Deal. And so let's not find ourselves in this situation again. So if we need to look to the EU, if we need to look to Asia, other parts of the world, now is the time for us to do so. But at the same time, listen, you cannot diversify overnight. The supply chain is built the way that it is to serve a lot of American customers, and so we're going to have to be there with the supports. At the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty. Typically, the tariff being applied would reduce volumes, but at the same time, we're seeing our Canadian dollar get hit, which usually means trade volume goes up. And so where does the balance fall with those different pressures, along with the other pressures that we're going to see? Let's not forget that China and Mexico are being hit. What's going to happen to the U.S. dollar? What's going to happen to other currencies? It's a really complex, multivariable equation that we're trying to follow. But to cut to the chase, we cannot allow jobs to be taken out of our province because of these actions. We cannot allow dollars to be taken out of our province. And so, again, this is a question about national identity. This is a question about who we are as Canadians and Manitobans. And as long as I'm the Premier, we are going to continue standing for the Maple Leaf, and we're going to continue shouting True North every time we sing the anthem. And if you have to switch to Crown Royal as part of us upholding that patriotism, I think that's a pretty good deal.
Mr. Lutnick, Mr. Trump, all claimed that this was about the border. In good faith, you, other premiers, the Prime Minister responded with border security measures of various sorts. Do you believe you have a negotiating partner in the U.S. President?
Ultimately, there will be negotiation here. And I think the Canadian strategy, including the role that Manitoba has played, has been first to not escalate and to try to lay the groundwork for a good conversation. We were in D.C. last year. We've been in multiple states. We've done a lot of outreach. We've done steps on the border. We've made investments. We've strengthened trade. We've invested in our manufacturers here at home to prepare and to start onshoring in recognition that this was a real possibility. So we've been getting ready. And we have been trying to solve this over a warm and hearty handshake. But now that the fight is here, we are sticking up for ourselves and we are pushing back. And today we're announcing that we're pulling $80 million out of the American economy. And that's just little old Manitoba. So I'm asking you to buy Canadian beer and to buy Canadian wine and Canadian liquor as part of us sticking up for our jobs and sticking up for our economy.
Legal avenues Manitoba can pursue, say, for example, pre-existing contracts to purchase hydro?
Yeah, I mean, the hydro contracts stand. They're denominated in U.S. dollars. There will be this application of a tariff, but it's up to the customer in the U.S. to pay it. So there will be an inflationary impact here on American customers. The Trump tariff tax is going to cost Americans. I don't think Americans, frankly, are paying attention to that yet. But part of the steps that we need to take are to raise the visibility of this issue in the U.S.
So Americans paying attention is a good point, because I did a little scan yesterday. Top line, Minneapolis Star-Tribune, nothing in the Fargo Forum whatsoever. What are you going to do to make nearby residents aware of what this may be doing to their consumer spend?
I think if there's less Manitoba parking, if there's less Manitoba plates in the parking lot at Shields in Fargo, that's how you get North Dakota to pay attention. If the price of gas and the price of electricity gets more expensive, that's how you get the average Midwesterner to pay attention. And again, there are steps that we are taking to ensure that the American audience starts to pay attention to what's going on here. I think Manitobans and Canadians are paying attention to this loud and clear. I think we all realize the impact that this is going to happen, that this is going to have on our jobs and our economy, but we need to ensure that the American public understands how bad of a decision this is as well.
And what about all the Canadian public? Musk controls Twitter, Zuckerberg, Bezos, they control other means of disseminating information through social media. What can you do to reach other Canadians that may not understand the enormity of the situation?
We're using every tool that we have, social media, the traditional media, I was at a hockey game talking about this early this morning, so word of mouth. Whatever we can do to get the word out that now is the time to support our jobs and our economy, that's what we're going to do. And today we're talking about pulling U.S. products off of Liquor Mart shelves because that's pulling American resources away from them and reinvesting them here into our province. But again, there's going to be many steps that we have to take. And as this continues to play out, I think Manitobans and Canadians, more than anything, just need to stick together. Unity is one of the most important tools that we have in order to bring leverage onto the U.S. Unity as Canadians, unity as Manitobans. And let's keep in mind that some people are going to bear the impact of this tariff tax much more quickly than others. But if we all do our part, then that's how we can make a difference for one another and ensure that people keep working and that our economy keeps moving forward in a good way.
Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter juste en français, s'il vous plaît, la partie sur l'unité, puis les personnes qui seront affectées?
Bien, l'unité, c'est très important. En tant que le Premier ministre du Manitoba, je vous demande de... Nous devons rester unis comme un peuple ici dans le Manitoba et dans le Canada, parce que ça, c'est la façon que nous pourrons effectuer un changement dans les États-Unis. Bien, en même temps, ça se peut qu'il y aura des Manitobains et Manitobaines qui vivront les effets de ces changements cette semaine. Pour des autres, ça va prendre des mois, mais tout le monde va être affecté. Alors, c'est ça la raison que nous devons être unis ensemble pour lutter contre ce défi et pour lutter ensemble pour nos emplois et pour notre économie. Okay, we'll go to Zoom quick.
Okay, thank you, Premier. We have two outlets on Zoom today. We have the Free Press and then the Winnipeg Sun. Dan, we'll start with you. Go ahead.
Premier, I'm just wondering, so we've premiers across the country, federal government are announcing responses to the tariffs. Some of this involves the cessation of selling of U.S. products. Other measures are going to come. So this is our rational response to an irrational problem. But what's the strategy here? Like, how do you see our responses playing out and leading to a resolution? Is this literally trying to make Donald Trump so unpopular for his own policy that he reverses course? Or so what is the macro strategy here?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're placing a series of bets on different outcomes. And that is one of the bets that we need to place, is that we can, make the case to the American public and that President Trump reverses course. We also need to place a bet on the scenario where these become long-term sources of economic pain that we need to live with. And so in total, the sum of the actions that we're taking and have been laying the groundwork for over the past 15 or 16 months are to give our economy time and space to adjust. In the first instance, it's about keeping people working and keeping the lights on in factories and in the ag industry so that we have a chance to keep our head above water. But over the long term, we need to pivot towards being a manufacturing and an energy and an agriculture hub that serves many more markets than just the United States. And in order for us to diversify, we need time. In order for us to build up the productivity in our economy, we need time. This is work that we've already started in preparation for this moment. We hoped that we weren't going to get to this place, but now that we're here, we're activating those plans and we're moving forward. And part of it means pushing back and sticking up for ourselves as Manitobans and Canadians. And so taking $80 million out of the booze industry in the States today is one step that we can take as Manitobans to make the case south of the border. But at the same time, the bigger project here is to respond to a long-term shift towards protectionism that we're seeing happening around the globe. And Manitobans and Canadians need to make up for lost time when it comes to getting our economy where it needs to be.
So do you think there's a scenario where the president will feel enough of his own pain that all of these industries that are being hurt either by his own tariffs or by our actions, that they will, is that the ultimate goal, is to somehow get him to reverse course?
That is the intention with the federal government's actions. Again, that's part of our intention here. But this is also a question of national identity and national sovereignty. And we have to send a message that we are not going to bow down. And so that is one of the other steps, or one of the other rationales, rather, behind the actions that we're taking. And again, we're not seeking to have an all-out trade war, but if our large trading partner to the south begins kicking sand in our face, then we have to stick up for ourselves and we have to push back. And that's part of what we're seeing here too. And at the same time, when we do respond, that creates space for us to operate. And of course, at the same time, we've been placing these bets in our manufacturing sector and our advanced education space to try and, seed future economic opportunities for Manitobans. And so while we lean into having those efforts bear fruit, we need to take steps to preserve what we have here today, preserve jobs, preserve our economy.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Kevin from Winnipeg Sun.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Premier. You had talked about unity and buying local and shopping local and Canadian products. My question is, will you consider eliminating the PST on Canadian-made or Manitoba-made products while this tariff is in place to make those products a little more attractive and economical for people to purchase?
Well, it's an interesting question. You can tell by my pause that it is not necessarily something we've been entertaining. I think you're going to see us incentivize shopping local and buying local over the course of this week. I also think that the impact of the tariffs and the effects that it has on currency is probably going to make Canadian goods attractive for people to buy as well too. At the same time, we need to preserve our fiscal firepower to support our jobs and support our economy. And we're going to need fiscal firepower over the next few years. And we also have to keep an eye on being fiscally responsible because we know that over the medium term and over the long term, that having a sustainable fiscal framework here in Manitoba is a really important part of how we support the economy and we protect your jobs as Manitobans.
Okay, Kevin, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Premier. Canada and Mexico have the ability to initiate a dispute under the World Trade Organization rules, as it appears that the U.S. Tariffs do violate global trade agreements. My question to you is, will you push the Prime Minister or your colleagues, other premiers across the country to consider taking this legal action?
Yeah, I think that's a topic of discussion. This is also a clear violation of the Canada-U.S. Mexico agreement, CUSMA, USMCA, as it's called, south of the border. And so where we have legal recourse, I think as a country, we should use those tools. But again, when our trading partner to the south, their president, orders them to take actions which clearly violate those agreements, I think at the very least we need to be realistic and take steps to protect our economy with the understanding that even if those legal avenues might be successful in the future, that we need to keep people working and we need to keep paychecks hitting bank accounts each and every day, each and every week. And so, yeah, good tools for us to have. But this fight is here today, and we need to support you, the working person, now. And that's what we're going to do, while at the same time taking steps to stick up for ourselves as Canadians, to stick up for ourselves as Manitobans. I guess we're going back to the room now. Yeah. If there's any more questions here.
You mentioned unity off the top and then later again.
Yeah.
This raises a big elephant, and I don't mean the Republican one.
Okay.
We have a minority
Yeah.
government with a resigning prime minister undergoing a leadership race. We have an opposition chomping at the bit to defeat them and put Canada into election situation, as an opposition rightfully should be chomping at the bit to do. Now, what would you say to Mr. Polyev, Mr. Trudeau, and the other federal party leaders to present a united front right now at a time when they would, quite rationally be going at each other's throats. But what would you say to them about the importance of doing that right now?
Yeah, it's important to have unity. It's important for Canadians to work together. And we're going to need to support workers, and we're going to need to support business over the coming weeks and months, and most likely years as well, as we pivot our economy. And so I think over this next few week period, where we know what the political landscape is going to look like at the federal level, there should be unity to work together and ensure that we're all moving forward. And I think, I'll leave the political analysis to yourself and to others, but what I would say is there's a pretty clear ballot question for the federal election now, and that is who is best suited to stand up for Canada in the face of President Trump.
Last night, the Star Spangled Banner got booed at a hockey game. Are you expecting to see that phenomenon occurring in Manitoba, and what would your view be on that?
Well, I think we have to recognize our quarrel is not with the American people. Like our friends, and in many of the case for many of our families, our relatives on the other side of the 49th parallel are still our friends and relatives. And we still share a history of our veterans fighting shoulder to shoulder in the great conflicts of the world where we fought for democracy and we defeated fascism together. We can't turn our back on that. We still have so much in common culturally, even though, maybe we say 3 downs, they say 4 downs when it comes to football, but still. So we still have so many things in common with the American people, and we can't let the actions that have been taken by President Trump and his administration sour that. And so I understand that people are frustrated right now, but I think now is the time for Canadian pride. And let's just try to exercise our Canadian pride in a way that's patient, but not deferential when it comes to our neighbor to the south.
On the topic of unity again, I know you mentioned that you've had the chance to talk to other premiers. Just want to ask, would you say other premiers are also aligned
100%.
with the policy going towards tariffs?
Yeah.
Mr. Premier, I have a question. You mentioned you support the federal government's response. Are you concerned that counter tariffs might impact tourism, particularly Americans wanting to come to Manitoba? I know that Manitoba relies on tourism from the States, so I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
No, I think Americans should continue coming here to spend money. Absolutely. Okay. Well, like I said, we're going to have more announcements through the week, so look forward to seeing folks as this evolves. But again, vive le Canada libre.